Hey everybody, it's Miss Kent. If you haven't watched week 3, day 3, go back and do that because there is a link to this book, The Stranger by Chris Van Allsburg. Today is week 4, day 1, and today we're going to try to make an inference about this book because in many of Chris Van Allsburg's books, he doesn't come right out and tell us kind of how the book ends. It's not really how the book ends, but he doesn't come out and tell us what we're thinking. So he leaves some mystery there and he kind of leaves us hanging like we don't know. Making inferences is very important because when an author is writing a book for you to read, they want to make it interesting. For them to make it interesting, they cannot include every single detail. There are many things that you have to make inferences about. So inferences would be your background knowledge, what you know, plus your text clues, what's in the book, and your inference is not a guess. A guess is just saying, oh, I just think this. An inference is using what you know, what you've read, and then trying to understand what you think the author's trying to say. And Chris Van Allsburg's very good about not coming out and saying things. That's what makes that's why his books are so wonderful. So The Stranger. Did you figure out who the stranger is? Now, we know a stranger is somebody that we don't know. We've never met him before. It's not someone who's familiar to us. So I'm going to flip through here, and I want to see if there's any. I'm going to talk about my background knowledge and some of the text clues that I have. So as the story starts, I saw there was the text clues telling me about the season. It was that time, like at the end of summer, the first of fall. I really don't know if that's going to be important to my inference here, but I was just thinking about that. Now, here's something important. The driver, the farmer, hit a man. I'm going to write that down in my text clues. Now, I'm just writing notes down so you see I didn't write a period or anything, okay? Usually, I know in my background knowledge, when I'm driving down the road, I have never hit anyone with my car because I'm usually paying really good attention. And when I look at these pictures, it definitely, looking at his truck, it's an older model. I have that background knowledge. It's definitely a time before cell phones. So my background knowledge is going to tell me and when I say it's a time before cell phones, and sorry that S is kind of written there, I'm meaning this. It was a time when most people were really focused on what they were doing and not so distracted by their phone ringing. So as that farmer was driving down the road, he really had no distractions. Why did he hit somebody? Where did they come from? It's a time before cell phones. He was paying attention. He hit a man. I'm just going to have to infer here, did the guy jump out of nowhere? I'm going to put jumped out of where? I don't know where he came from, because I'm sure that farmer was looking. Okay, it says the farmer stopped to help him, and you know, by background knowledge, most people would stop and help someone else. Now, he's took this man home. My background knowledge tells me that most people are pretty nice. They would try to help someone. But what's kind of strange about this guy is he doesn't understand, or he looks at them confused. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know how to talk. So I'm going to put down text clue. He doesn't talk. Maybe he can talk, but he doesn't understand what they're saying, or maybe he speaks a different language. So if he doesn't understand them or he speaks a different language, what background knowledge do I have about that? He's probably not from the area, because I know that people that are not from here, and actually that would be my inference. That would be my inference, but my background knowledge is text clue. He doesn't talk or understand. My background knowledge is from when I talk to people. I'm just going to put when I talk to people, because sometimes when I talk to people, they might not understand what I'm saying. Maybe they're from the north, like New York, and they don't understand my southern accent. Or maybe they're from a different country. So I'm just going to put he's possibly not from this area. Let's see what happens next. So the doctor comes to the house, and they try to take his temperature. And remember I told you about the mercury in the glass thermometers rising? It's broken. The mercury was stuck to the bottom of the thermometer. That means, so when you put the thermometer in your mouth, the mercury would rise, and if you had a normal temperature of about 97 degrees, it would stop there. If you were in a fever, it would go up. This thermometer's not working. So text clues. The mercury. Now, if the mercury doesn't rise, that means there's no heat. That's my background knowledge. He has no heat in his body. And we've talked about animals that are ectothermic. Remember, they rely on the sun and things for their heat, and that we're not ectothermic, we're endothermic. Is he human? Ooh. So let's see. So far, I'm inferring he's jumped out of where? I don't know where. He's not from this area. He's not human if he doesn't have a temperature, because we're endothermic. So they're eating dinner, and they're getting their food, and Miss Bailey shivers because there's a draft. Now, I remember from the beginning of the story, the farmer had said this was that time between summer and fall, so having a draft would be common. I'm not going to write that down here. Like a draft is when it's a little cool. Now, in this next part of the story, this stranger, the animals seem to like him. But that's nothing unique, because some people, dogs and cats, just seem to like some people more than others. So Mr. Bailey took him out to help with the hay. And Mr. Bailey got tired and had to rest like most of us do when we're working. But the stranger never sweat. There was no sweat. He never got tired. He never got tired from work. I have to put a note down. My background knowledge is everyone gets tired. I hate writing on this board. My handwriting looks terrible. I'm just going to have to infer who is this man? I've already said he's not human. He never gets tired. He doesn't even sweat. We all sweat because we have pores in our body, little holes that release sweat. So in the evening, he just sat outside and watched the trees and the birds. He's been there for 2 weeks. How can he not remember who he is? They thought maybe he hit his head when he fell. He hasn't talked. It's been 2 weeks. Why has someone not called? But then they thought about maybe he's a hermit. There are people who live by themselves who have no relatives, and maybe nobody's looking for him. Maybe he's somebody that stays at home like we all do now. So now we're in week 3. And the farmer started noticing something peculiar or strange with the weather. It's time for him to harvest the pumpkins. When it's time to harvest, that's when summer's over and fall begins, when you bring in the harvest. But it stayed warm. His pumpkins grew even larger than they usually did because of the warm weather. The leaves on the trees were green. Should put out my text clues would be hot weather. But I mean, my background knowledge here tells me we've had some really nice days of like 70 and 80, and then today, which today is actually Sunday at my house that I'm recording this, April the 25th, I believe, or 26th, I'm not sure. April the 26th, it's like 50 degrees outside. So I've already planted my garden, but now it's cold. So my background knowledge is you can't really predict the weather. I mean, you can, but between the seasons kind of had that change where one day it's cold and one day it's hot. So I don't know, but for Mr. Bailey, this is odd because his pumpkins are getting huge. So then the stranger looks out and he looks at the beautiful trees from the fall. Those colors are so bright. But then he sees the green here with the sheep, and to him, they're so ugly. It's drab. I always love to drive my car when the fall leaves are pretty. So my background knowledge would be that I enjoy seeing the fall leaves. And I'm going to put here the text clues. Some leaves are green and some have changed. But here's the thing that's confusing. We usually don't see where they're just like lush green, and then these are all autumn colors. Usually these would have been turning to yellow. I really don't know what I can infer here. I don't. This is a spot I'm kind of stumped at. I know that I enjoy looking at those leaves. Some of the leaves are green, some have changed. I don't really know. But then he picked up that leaf. He pulled it off the tree that was green. And when he touched it, he knew there was something terribly wrong. Because the leaf changed when he touched it. His face is very surprised here. Text clue. He blew on the leaf and it changed. I really have no background knowledge there because I've never blown on a leaf and it changed. I am going to make an inference though. Is he magic? So he came to dinner that evening and he was all dressed in his old clothes that he got hit with. Miss Bailey knew he had on his old clothes. It was time for him to go. She was sad. She hugged him. They went outside to say goodbye. And just like he appeared, he disappeared down the road. Just as he had just came out of nowhere, the text says he's gone again. Mrs. Bailey hurried outside to wave goodbye, but the stranger had disappeared. The air had turned cold, and the leaves on the trees were no longer green. I'll have to put leaves changed. Now I know it's definitely fall. That's when the leaves changes in fall. Every autumn since the stranger's visit, the same thing happens at the Bailey farm. The trees that surround it stay green for weeks after the trees to the north have turned. Then overnight, they change their color to the brighter than any tree around. And etched in frost on the farmhouse windows are the words that simply say, "See you next fall." Now, etched means it's kind of drawn there in frost. He came from nowhere. We know he's not a local farmer. We said he's not human because he had no temperature. He could work all day and he never broke a sweat. And it was hot outside. The weather was warm and he never sweat. When he picked up that leaf and blew it, it turned from green to red. And he knew something was wrong. Then he said it was time to leave, and he left. Who can you infer that this stranger is? Now, there's two different inferences I can make, and I don't know the answer to which one's correct because Chris van Allsburg doesn't tell us. He likes to leave it up to you. I can infer that this stranger would be summer, like the season summer, because when he was there, the leaves didn't change. But when I infer he's summer, I think back to he didn't have a temperature. And summer is something that's usually hot. He never got tired or was sweaty. But in the summer, you get tired easily. You're getting sweaty. It's hot outside. When he blew on the leaf, it turned to red. In the summer, leaves are green. So my second inference would be that he's fall. And let's see if this inference makes more sense. He didn't have a temperature. In fall, the weather's not too cold. It's not too hot. It's just right. He never got tired and he didn't sweat. In the fall, people can work longer outside without getting as tired, and they will sweat a little bit, but not as much as when the sun is beating down on them. The real thing from the text clue and my background knowledge that kind of is making me lean towards his fall is when he picked up that leaf and blew it, it turned red. Summer's here, everything turns green. Right now we're having spring and things are turning green. But when he left, everything changed. So I'm going to infer that this man is fall. And as he's traveling along, he's changing the leaves. But when he stopped where he stopped, nothing changed. It stayed the same until he touched it with his magic touch. Now, I don't know if my inference is correct because we all have different background knowledge. You might have made a different inference about it. I hope that you enjoyed this book. It's a wonderful book by Chris van Allsburg. And I hope that your inference, that you're able to support whatever you inferred with background knowledge and text clues. Maybe your inference is a little different. Maybe you'd like to leave that below in the comments or let me know on Seesaw. Have a great day. Bye.